It is actually raining right now, and there is nothing I can do to make the rain stop. But I realize I still have to make YouTube videos. So I came up with an idea. Let's do horror stories that happened right now. Put you guys in the mood. Anyways, guys, let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights for true scary horror stories that happened while it was... The maniac who wanted us to sing in the rain. So my friend George and I were having some late Friday night fun. We got something to eat at McDonald's, went to the arcade for a bit, and then decided to try out of BMX tricks in the park. By the time we got to the park, it was around 12:30 a.m. It was dead silent, so we were pretty loud, considering there were basically no houses around the park's area. After doing quite a bit of tricks, we decided to take a break and sit down. As we drank our water, we heard loud footsteps from the distance, about 45 feet away, I would say. As it got closer, I could begin to see a silhouette of a man walking at a brisk pace along the sidewalk. I passed it off thinking it was just a late night exercise walker or something. As he turned the corner, we continued our tricks as normal. However, eventually he returned. This time, we just ignored him because we thought it wasn't strange at all. However, as I glanced at him, he had stopped walking and stood there with his arms to his sides and just stared at us. He was about 20 feet away at this point, and he was just staring at us. George just said, "Weird fucking guy, huh?" I did a small nod. I didn't stare at him for too long, just enough to get a glimpse of his body language. After that, we decided to ride as fast as we could down the sidewalk to an empty parking lot in the very back of the park. The man stayed in the same spot and never moved, or as we thought. After about 5 minutes of having no more encounters with the man in the parking lot, I saw him standing at the corner of the parking lot, staring at us. George was fed up at this point, and having a big of balls as he has, yelled out, "What the fuck do you want?" The man simply yelled back, "Sorry, I'm just looking for my daughter." "Do we look like your daughter?" George yelled back. The man gave no response, and simply walked away. He's probably just drunk. Before heading home, George and I decided just to take a quick stop at 7-Eleven and get a few things. As we left the shop, we saw the man near a gas pump again staring at us with an expression on his face that showed he was interested in us. George was fed up and marched straight over to the man. "What do you want?" he yelled. Now, both George and I are around 6'2", and were standing over the man menacingly. He was no taller than 5'5", yet he had a look of calmness. "I apologize. Then he sprinted off into the night. Creepy old fuck. And that was the end of that. For that night. The next day, George and I met up at the park again to do some more BMX tricks. I got a strange feeling that I was being stared at, and I looked all around, but I didn't see anything. I just thought it was an overlaying effect from last night. When George had just finished up a trick, his face went from "that was awesome" to "what the fuck." As I turned around, in the giant shrubs, there was the man again, staring at us. George started to quickly walk towards the man, and he just kept staring at us. Eventually, the man began to sprint away, but he had something in his hand. It was a video game. "You are fucking recording us?" But the man was too far gone to continue. On the ground in the shrubs, we found dropped CDs and an iPhone. We immediately took them home and looked over them. The iPhone was filled with nothing but words on Notepad, and it read, "Those two boys are too pretty. I'll have to see if they'll sing in the rain." We could never discover what that means, but on the music app in the phone, there was nothing but singing in the rain songs, compositions or covers, nothing more. And the background was of Gene Kelly singing the song. We were already creeped out, but dared to look at the CDs on them. There were tons of videos of George and I doing things, from BMXing to talking on the street to going to fast food restaurants. But the thing is, the oldest videos were from 7 months ago. A wet and windy morning. First time poster here. It was one of those freezing winter mornings, perfect for taking my lovely bulldog for a stroll. It was raining quite heavily, and also quite windy, but I put on my husband's coats, put the hood up, and we were on our way. There's a beautiful walking trail by the river, which is a 15-minute walk from where I lived, and then you can walk for around 20 minutes around an inner city farm, but it feels like you're in rural England. It's so green and gorgeous, and there's horses and cows, goats, sheep, etc., which my bully loves to sniff at through the fence. We arrived at the bridge, where there's a set of stairs next to it. She always strains at the leash here and practically pulls my arm out of its socket as she knows we are about to walk by the river, thus reaching her barnyard friends, which she can sniff to her heart's content. The rain had let up a bit, but it was around 8 a.m., and it was still quite dark due to the wet weather, and where I live, never being sunny during the winter months. As she was pulling me down the stairs, I saw a man about 40 meters ahead of us on the path. He was in dark clothing, not unusual in the winter time, had his hood up, as did I, and had his hands in his pocket. It was cold outside. The thing that made me feel a bit funny inside was that he was just standing on the path, slightly off-center, so if he wanted he could actually step into the grass and trees, which line the river. Usually there is bike riders galore, so I thought, oh well, I'm a fast runner, and there'll be someone along in no time. I wasn't too scared, just had that slightly queasy feeling that he wasn't quite right. My bully hadn't noticed anything, but she was busy sniffing the flowers and pretending she was a cow and chewing on grass. We got to within 20 meters of him, and suddenly my bully planted herself right in front of me, spread herself out. I could see the hair running down the middle of her back. I mean, she's a dog, she's covered in hair, but this was specifically the line running from her neck down to her tail, the middle. Stand up, and her little fat juicy jaws retracted to show off her pathetically tiny, but scary in this instance, teeth. She made the lowest growling sound I've ever heard her make, a threatening rumble from the pit of her stomach. I could barely look at the guy, but I glanced up and he was staring at me intently. It made my body go icy cold. My brain froze for an instant, and I had the foolish thought of, if I turn around and go the other way, I might hurt his feelings if he's harmless. She made the decision for me by literally running around for me on her lead and dragging me in the opposite direction from this man and hightailing up the stairs. She was literally pulling me, and my legs were working of their own accord. Once you reached the top of the stairs, she slowed right down and just ambled along at her usually bully, sedate pace. I was so shaky, we walked along for a bit, and then I had to stop and cover her in kisses and cuddles. She was the really fat teddy bear who sleeps 18 hours a day and likes a slow stroll every now and then. I had never seen her act like that before or since. You can bet she got a big bowl of chicken and steamed veggies that night. He hated the rain. When I was about 23, I'm 26 now, my girlfriend and I were living in an apartment building in Phoenix. Our downstairs neighbor clearly had some mental issues going on. He was probably in his 60s, super skinny, always wore really tight tank tops and short shorts around. This is not the mental issues part. The buildings were built in the 70s. Obviously they have been renovated since then. Instead of the horizontal blinds, they had the vertical shitty ones now. No more carpet, updated appliances. You know what renovations are, but his apartment hadn't been. It was exactly the same, only his, in the whole complex. I know this because he usually had his blinds open, and I had to walk by his place to get on the stairs. He would always yell and bang things around in the apartment, and when it rained, he would go up on the roof and just scream. I mean, yell at the sky. And when he wasn't yelling at the sky, he was yelling, "Dang it!" in his apartment, over and over and over. And he would just come outside and pace around mumbling to himself when it was raining outside. Now the creepy part. I was into photography at the time, and it was raining and lightning, so my girlfriend, my friend Chris, and his girlfriend went to the roof to try and get some shots of the lightning. Of course, Wildman, as we called him, was on the 4th floor on his way to open the area of the roof. He asked us what was going on. This was the first interaction I've had with the guy. Even though I saw him all the time, I told him we were trying to take pictures of the lightning. "Why the hell would you want to do that? That's stupid!" So we just said, "Okay, dude," and went on our way. He followed us over to the roof. So we said, fuck it, we're leaving. We walked over to the elevator, and he followed us again. We got into the elevator, and he just stood outside of it, looking at us. I put my girlfriend behind me, and Chris did the same. I know what this guy was about to do. He just stood there. The doors closed, and we all kind of chuckled inside out of relief. Then, like a horror movie, the doors opened up again. I guess he pushed a button, and while a man was standing there, he told us to go away, and I told him, that's what we're trying to do. The doors closed again, and the elevator went down. We all went back to my apartment, and were considerably freaked out. So, wild man, I'm sorry for whatever happened to you during the rain, but let's not meet again. Uncomfortable meetup in the bush. So I've never really been popular with guys, and being a teenager at the time, thought meeting up with my older brother's childhood friend made me super cool and interesting. He was 20, I was 16. I'd known this guy for most of my childhood, and despite all the stories my brother has told me about said guy, I chose to ignore all the strange signs that followed this meetup we had planned. For starters, it wasn't much of a planned meetup, more of an unwarranted invite to hang out and smoke a J. He's never showed any interest in me, although I thought he was pretty cute, so this, of course, piqued my interest. We had met at one time before, but I had no idea he was interested because I was kind of a noob at the whole guy showing me attention thing, you know? It was already quite late, I'd say at around 12 a.m., so this sketched me out a little bit, but I really just wanted him to think I was cool. We agreed to meet in the parking lot of the school I lived close to. The school is also very close to a river, which is surrounded by brush, and there are a few winding paths that go through it, mostly used by dog walkers. When he told me he had arrived, I assumed he would be where we agreed to meet, so I began walking towards the parking lot. I soon realized he was nowhere to be found, and I assumed he hadn't arrived yet. I walked up a road a bit further, and saw a pair of headlights a good ways up. I warily walked towards it, assuming it would be him, despite my large fear of it being possibly anyone else or some rando jumping out of the bushes to jump me. This is the part where I should have turned around and went home. Now, I'm already a very anxious person, so I was on high alert as soon as I got his message. Sure enough, it was him up the road, but I got really scared when the headlights disappeared halfway through the walk, and I contemplated turning back. He had been slowly walking towards me. As I was walking towards him, I saw him emerge from the darkness, and we awkwardly exchanged small talk, and he asked if there were any good places to sit by the river. Now, I'm not incredibly familiar with the paths, but we chose one and began walking along it. We soon found a bench to sit on, but he claimed he didn't like the light coming from a nearby lamppost. This was the first strange thing. Despite my minimal knowledge on these paths, I knew more than this guy. I would tell him, I know a good place we could sit, follow me, and he would blatantly ignore me and take me deeper down the paths. I was getting increasingly more uncomfortable until, finally, he found a little opening right by the river that was pretty much secluded from any passerbys. At this point, I realized he wanted to be right by the river for that stereotypical romantic effect. We sat on the ground, smoked his J, and talked awkwardly for what felt like hours. He kept slowly getting closer to me, and it progressed to us laying on the hard-ass ground, and he brought up the subject of sex. He talked about how he really wanted to get with me, but it was weird because of his friendship with my older brother. I was extremely uncomfortable because of this. I wasn't the most innocent kid, but the subject of sex made me feel really anxious as I was a virgin. We were there for many hours, and I didn't know how to tell him I wanted to leave, and I tried hinting by saying I was cold and it was getting early, and my mom would be home soon. He would just keep getting closer. Once it started getting light out, because the sun was coming up, I became worried that it was going to rain. I kept saying this, but he promptly ignored it, till it actually started raining. It was a full-out thunderstorm. When we finally decided to stand up and move, I told him my back was sore from sitting like that, and he insisted on cracking my back for me. I told him it was fine, but he persisted, so I allowed him to wrap his arms around me and do the backwards hug maneuver. If you're not sure what it looks like, it's when someone wraps their arms tightly around your upper body from behind and lifts you up while squeezing you, almost like an enthusiastic hug. When he did this, it didn't quite feel right, and it felt like he was using me to rub against him. I quickly moved away at the nearest opportunity. I really wanted to leave at this point. He continued to lead me further down the paths, even though I kept telling him we were going the wrong way, we were going the wrong way. It was raining at this point, and he insisted that it would die down soon. Like, he could control the fucking weather, you know? It didn't die down, and it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. We were far away from my house at this point, and I kept telling him at that moment we should turn back, and of course, he continued to ignore me. Eventually, he realized we should turn back, and he offered to drive me back to my house. I complied, although very wary. We ran to his car because it was downpouring at this point, and I was wearing poor footwear. We got into his car, and he began driving the opposite direction of my house, and I calmly asked where he was going. He told me he didn't want to be seen by my mother or older brother, so he would drop me off somewhere near my house. I was praying he didn't just take me back to his house, but thankfully, I got him to stop at a nearby street. I was about to get out and run, but he locked the doors and insisted I wait till the rain dies down. It got to the point that I wasn't just shaking from the cold anymore. Eventually, I decided I couldn't just sit in there for a minute longer, so I told him I need to get home or my mom would be looking for me. He then asked if there was any way I didn't have to leave. He wanted to take me back to his house and I could spend the night, and I proceeded to insist that my mom would be searching for me. This seemed to convince him. He asked if anyone else knew about our meetups, and I said, no. He smiled and said, good. It's more fun when we're sneaking around. And just as I was about to bolt out of his car door, he stopped me one last time and said, do I get a kiss at least? This part, I very much regret, but for some reason, I was still set on him thinking I was cool, so I did. I regret it to this day, because I didn't want it yet. I was a sad and lonely kid who was just desperate for attention, you know? I walked home barefoot, and I became increasingly more angry the more I thought about the whole thing, but the anger soon turned to fear and sadness. I feared him coming over to hang out with my brother, and that I might have to see him again. I was sad that I let myself be put in that darn situation. I was afraid that entire time, yet I never once thought to stand up for myself, thought to stand up for my rights. I want to tell any other timid teenage girl out there who wants to be cool that your comfort matters 100%. If you don't feel completely comfortable with anyone, with that guy, with that kid, please trust your gut. It's the strongest signal that something is not right about the situation. If I hadn't gotten out of that car, I'm afraid of what might have happened.